Presenting now is Dr. Bayo Yemi. He is a faculty member at Mountaintop University's Department of Music. He earned his music degree from Obafemi Awolowo University, specializing in piano performance, and later obtained a postgraduate diploma in management studies from the same university. He furthered his education at the University of Lagos, earning a master and PhD in music with a focus on ethnomusicology. His research interests include African musicology, music business, and music theory, with extensive work on Yoruba musicology. His current research explores the poetic and aesthetics of Yoruba drumming. He will be presenting Rising Notes, Exploring Growth and Challenges in Nigeria's Music Ecosystem, a 10-year scholarly journey at the Organ House.
Let me apologize for the slight alteration in the topic. When after completion of the paper, I discovered that I have to think out with the topic. But it's very little. Now, in the coming to the ideal of presenting in this symposium, because last year I was too busy to present. Now I was in a dilemma. Should I delve into some of my works and present, or do a fresh work? But it just occurred to me that this is an opportunity for me to open Organ House to you. As the head of that department, I think this is time for us to know Organ House. Really, we have met Organ House, some of us visually and physically. I've interacted with Organ House at eye level, but I think it is my duty, being the first time I'm approaching you formally, to introduce Organ House to you. My paper today is in 2 dimensions. I'll be drawing on my experience as a funding staff and to examine my lived experiences and insight, shedding light on the history of the department, challenges, strategies, and outcomes of establishing a music institution in Nigeria. And I'll be using Organ House as the microcosm, that's the dimension 2, microcosm of the arts music landscape in Nigeria. This strategic narrative aims to serve as a window into known issues surrounding music academies in the country and probably in Africa. My argument, I argue that the state of music education in Nigeria reflects broader tensions between indigenous knowledge system and imported educational models. The article interrogates the structural and epistemological challenges facing music education in Nigeria. The aim is not to write a general history of Nigerian music education, but to situate the specific case of Organ House within the broader realities of access, policy, and practice in Nigeria tertiary music education between 2016 and 2026. The study examines how these factors constrain access, quality, and cultural authenticity in music instruction. Second objective, instigate further discourse on decolonizing music education in Nigeria and beyond. Because of the nature of the work, I've hinged the work on 3 theoretical frameworks: post-colonial theory, Afrocentricity theory, and institutional theory. Post-colonial theory provides a critical lens for examining the continuing influence of colonial structures in knowledge production and cultural institutions. Foundational texts such as Said Orientalism, Ngugi wa Thiong'o Decolonizing the Mind, and Walter Rodin, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, established the framework for understanding how Eurocentric curricula and performance practice have shaped music education in Africa. Within this framework, the study interrogates the department's effort to reposition African musical art and to challenge the persistence of cultural imperialism in contemporary Nigerian higher education. The second theory, Afrocentricity, as developed by Ashanti, Centers of African Agency, epistemologies, and cultural values in academic and artistic practice. It provides a normative basis for the department's funding philosophy of Africanism, which informed curriculum design, repertoire selection, and institutional identity. Within the framework of Afrocentrism, Afrocentricity, the department is understood as a site for fostering African cultural consciousness and contributing to identity formation in post-colonial Nigeria. The last theory is institutional theory, particularly the Maggio and Powell's concept of institutional isomorphism, explains how new organizations gain legitimacy by adopting structures and practices recognized within the established field. This perspective is applied to analyze the challenges and adaptive strategies involved in establishing a private university music department alongside other public institutions. We are barely 10 years old and we're in the same space with University of Nigeria that is over 60 years. So we must be very strategic. The methodology. The study adopts two complementary quantitative methods, historical narrations and autoethnography. In autoethnography, I, Bayo, will be the data and the researcher. I will explore lived experience as a staff of organelles to interrogate the topic. Now to the first part, the establishment. Organelles was established 10 years ago, and we started with undergraduate. We actually started with 5 students, and eventually we were able to graduate 2 of them. I mean, maybe during questioning time, I will ask you the circumstances that surround that. Then, in 2023, we migrated to postgraduate studies. Now, the founding philosophy of organelles. One of the core philosophies behind the establishment of MTU Music Department is Africanism, not minding it is a Christian faith-based university. Africanism in this concept refers to the process of enculturation, that is, the critical and faithful embodiment of Christian doctrine through African epistemologies, communal values, linguistic idioms, and aesthetics forms. This approach resists both cultural erasure, we don't do that, and syncretism by maintaining biblical fidelity while allowing gospel to be articulated in terms intelligible to African community. Thus, it does not alter the content of Christian faith, but shapes its forms and expression within Africans' social and spiritual imagination. In addition, the academic standard must aim to reposition Africa and African musical art in the 21st century through both theoretical and practical output. The mandate also includes building a music institution that stands at par with global counterparts in infrastructure, human capital, and academics. You've come around for 4 days, you've seen the infrastructure. I'll be talking to you shortly about the human capital and academic resources. The theme, the department was birthed by late Professor Vida. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Ayoda Mokwe Oluranti came on board and the optic changed. Then, as of today, we have an array of professors, distinguished professors on the board of organelles. We have people like Professor Mojola as a distinguished professor of the board of organelles. We have people like Professor Stevanos Mola. We have people like Professor Adeoluwa Okwade. We have people like Professor Loko on the board of organelles. And we have people like Dr. Ayo Oladile on the board, and so many others who form the team of organelles. And those are the people behind what we are seeing today. Now the results so far, which is interesting. We started 10 years ago. As of today, we have graduated like 40 undergraduates. And so many of them are all in and around the world, exploring, proving their methods. I will just mention a few. Jide Afolalu studied guitar performance. It's in Germany now, having his master's. Chuka Onyese studied organ performance, and he just finished his master's in Oxford, and is about getting admission for his PhD. And this is Shalewa Alapa Christie. Shalewa Alapa Christie studied organ performance here. He's right in Iowa University, where he's doing a master's. And for those of us who were here last year, Shalewa was that young lady that gave a performance, organ researcher at the door there. Now, of specific mention are these 2 young ladies, Shemilori Alade and Grace Adegoke. These 2 ladies embodied organ house philosophy. They are now the face. They are the face of African organ house. Whatever I say today, you can see it in them. These 2 ladies came to organ house as rookies. But after 4 years, we turned them around. Today, Shemilori is doing a master's in organ house. Grace Adegoke is also doing a master's in organ house. Shemilori was that young lady that did a presentation on Tuesday that was speaking on Apala. Grace did her yesterday and was speaking on folklore. And I could hear, because I listened to them in my office, somebody said Shemilori was so small, and how could she be talking in Apala? Shemilori embodies Apala. She has been on ethnographic studies on Apala. She has dined and wined with Apala musicians. So she's good with Apala musicians. And the same thing, Grace Adegoke. The story of folklore and Grace Adegoke started right from her undergraduate and where she is today. So whatever I say today, you can see it in these two figures. Thank you so much. Now, the postgrad experience, yes, we started postgrad we have graduated like a couple of postgraduate master students, like 4 of them. But by the end of this year, by the grace of God, we will have our PhD. One of them will be presenting, don't let me let the cat out of there. But by the end of this year, we will have our first PhD graduate by the grace of God. Now, to the second part of mine, that is artistic autoethnography as a mediation. I'll be using Ebun as a lens into how the curriculum works, the culture, and the organ house. Ebun was that young lady who walked into my office in 2016 and said, "Good afternoon, sir. I've been offered admission to study music in organ house." I was wowed because for 2 or 3 weeks we have been rolling there, nobody. And I sat her down, "Ebun, why do you want to study music?" He said, she looked at my face and said, "I love music." "Fine. Did you have any pre-knowledge of music?" "No." "Have you been to any choir?" "No." "Have you done any graded exam?" "No." So how do I build a degree program on love alone? How do I turn that love into literacy, theory, performance, and eventually bachelor's degree? That's the point. The second candidate came, the same thing. Third, 4, 5, no knowledge. But we have to survive. After 6 months, Ebu sat for graded exam in MTU, and she passed. Excellent. That's grade 5. The following, November 4th, the following year, that's barely 1 year in organ house, she passed, 2 of them passed ABRSM grade 5 with distinction. Now, Ebun and Ade, our colleague, left organ house after 4 years, have studied composition under Oluranti. So that is what we do in organ house. Now, another problem is systemic gap. What I am expected to do today in relation with what my immediate society, the university expects me to do. That's a very big gap. What we are to do today, the kind of music we are doing today, and what do they understand. It took a lot of time before we can form an equilibrium. At a point, we were actually directed that we should offer our 100-level exam using CBT. We had to wrestle to get it done. That some musical courses cannot be done using CBT. Now, conflict of interest. My students want music technology, popular music, non-orchestral music. They don't even like theory. They want to play piano, but they don't want to saturate. But the curriculum said I should teach theory, counterpoint, orchestration, composition. I was in a dilemma. Then yet another intricate challenge. How do we impact Africanness into students who are themselves not African in practice, in orientation, or conduct? A greater number of my students who are already in distance from their culture. Most could hardly speak their indigenous language and had been conditioned against African beliefs and practices. Western culture has mediated through Christian faith, sat high on their orientation. Their daily musical lives were shaped more by pop, gospel, and digital culture than the oral tradition and communal practice that the NUC curriculum assumed as African. I found myself caught in the tension of balancing 2 realities. On one side was the lived realities of my students, their language, their taste, and their worldview, which were largely non-African in orientation. On the other side were the regulatory expectations of the NUC, which demanded African music, traditional form, and Western art music as the core of the degree. My classroom became the space where this contradiction played out. I was teaching Africanness to students whose cultural imaginations have been formed elsewhere, while defending the curriculum that claimed to represent them. However, in all these mounting challenges, I have identified one opportunity. My pedagogical task was not to correct Ebun's slack, but to translate that love into a language the academic could recognize. That is notation, theory, history, and technique. The NUC curriculum expected me to start at the 3rd layer, while Ebun required me to start at the preliminary. In retrospect, Ebun's entry exposes a politics of access in Nigerian music education. Students like her love music, consume it daily, live inside it culturally. Yet, the formal structure, wide syllabi, jam subject combination, school timetable render their love invisible on the university. I therefore return this argument, this is my conclusion, to the doorstep of water-roading critique of Western education in Africa. His observation remained piercing. The Western education system was not one that grew out of the African environment, no. Nor was it designed to promote the most rational use of material use, yes, or social resources, yes. It was not an educational system designed to give young people confidence and pride as members of African society. You suppose this against my lived experience at Organhouse. Roading analysis read less like historical records and more like contemporary diagnosis. If African art music is to have a future, this is my statement, sorry. This is my statement now. If African music is to have a future that is authentic and sustainable, we must begin to synchronize our pedagogical realities with our cultural system. This demands a deliberate decolonization of the curriculum. It is contradictory to speak of decolonizing music education in Nigeria when an institution like NUC with CCMA still requires graduation music students to offer a special topic in Western music as a prerequisite for graduation. The Organhouse experience compels us to ask, whose music are we training our students to own? And whose music are we training them to serve? Until curricula reflect the sound, philosophy, and spirituality of our environment, we will continue to produce musicians who are technically competent but culturally displaced. The time to act is now. Decolonizing must move from rhetoric to required courses, from conference papers to classroom practice. Decolonizing can't start at the university level. It must start there, and it must be holistic. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much for such an engaging presentation on Rising Notes, exploring growth and challenges in Nigerian music ecosystem. Please, if you have any question, okay, we have one. Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yemi. That was a very beautiful presentation. But I want to ask a few questions, maybe rhetoric questions. I don't know whether I want you to answer or I just want to ask that. One, you were able to produce those results because of the opportunity of you being in a university that is blessed with infrastructure and everything that can promote music education. Do you think your work, though yours is like a statement of what happened here, but yes, but I just was thinking that if majority of us that are in private university have this type of infrastructures, sorry, public, I want to say public, that we also will be able to produce very good and outstanding students. Though it's not like our students too are not thriving, but not at the degree that we have here. So peradventure, you could have some advice to give, or as a rider in your write-up, so that people that are in public institutions will not feel that they are not achieving anything. That's one. Two, the second one is this Africanness we've been talking about. We talk of Africanness so much, and I feel so bothered that it looks as if it's a lip service to me. For example, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to undermine what has transpired all this while. Yeah, I don't mean to undermine what has transpired. But I want to look at all the performances that has happened since we come. Apart from that dance that happened outside. What is the percentage of the Africanness in what we teach our students, in the performance, in the repertoires that will give them to play? So I want us to look at that so that we can revive and activate that Africanness. I told you it's a rhetoric question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let him react to that before I give.
Quickly, you see, I still envy the public universities because you see what we don't, some of things we lack here. You have it. I interact closely with LASU. The truth is, you see, African. When I speak of Afrikaners in organ house, some of my students saw drums first in organ house. I remember the day we bought a Ngeregu xylophone, and they came into my office, they ran out. Say, what is this? What is this? So, but that will not happen in your own case. That will not happen in your own case. So we've got to leverage on so many other things. I'm happy you are here today. You were not here last year. So this kind of interaction will continue to spread, and we begin to leverage on this. I will also be willing to come to your university to have interactions with you. So with that, we can. Then your second question.
Please make it short.
Afrikaners. You see, Afrikaners is a very deep thing. It can't start here. When you enter my office, the first thing I ask is, what is your name? If you say your name is Samuel, I will say, no, that's not your name. Give me your name. Your name is Chuku, that is your name. Because my name is Bayo Yemi. If you ask him, some people say, what is my Christian name? What is my English name? Am I English? So we should start from that preliminary. The orientation, they all know these things. I wrestle with Shemilori on tone mark, serious wrestle. So you must do it, and she began to learn it. Because you see, they are very simple, but very mighty things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll take all the questions so that.
Thank you. That was brilliant, Dr. Oyemi. That was fantastic. I think you demonstrate. I like how you move from the philosophical level to the pedagogical level to the success of students. Everything well put together. So, Professor Okunuga's question. One way to relate her perspective, if I may use that, to your presentation is, are we talking of a plural approach to what we can define as success in the Nigerian musical world? In other words, it's possible that we can have different versions of professionalism in some other universities who may not have the organ, but they have traditional instruments. And the way that I interrogate this, as many of you will know, is how we're dealing with contradictory impulses in post-colonial Africa, that we may not be aiming for just one type of Africanism. It could be Africanism in form of Fela Shuande's organ pieces that use Yoruba melodies in the context of Western forms. It could be Africanism in terms of the kind of thing that Fela Kuti does. It could be Africanism in terms of the kind of things that people who are into juju music, So should we think more in terms of multiple pathways to success in institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. In 1 minute.
Yes,
please.
absolutely.
Thank
absolutely. We shouldn't look at it. You see, look at the theme of this year's conference, African music. We removed African art music. I strongly believe the moment we put African art music, we have alienated a big section of the music community. But this one is broad, so it should be broad. I look forward to a day in this country where we have an institute of studying Fela. Just an institute studying Fela. So it should be broad like Prof. I agree with you totally.
So much. I don't know whether